Hi, this is Stuart Nachbar with Educated Quest. With me today is Christine Bowman. She is the Assistant Vice President for Admission at Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas. Southwestern is one of the 44 colleges that change lives across the United States. It is also one of two in Texas, as well as one of two that is a Hispanic serving institution. Those factors made it interesting to want to cover the school. And Christine is going to be the second person you will listen to on this school. It is a very interesting place. It is near Austin, Texas, less than half an hour from what was in the past called Armadillo World Headquarters.
Right.
Christine, maybe you could tell me why it was called that. And Austin is the 12th largest city in America. It is larger than Boston, which rhymes, and a place people call America's college town. So, Christine, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Stuart. I was so complimented by your invitation, and I'm excited to get to share my love and passion with Southwestern, with your audience and with you.
Um, who, when people are like, Southwestern is a liberal arts college.
Yes,
It's got like less than 1,600 undergrads.
that is correct. We're right at about 1,500.
That's pretty rare for Texas, isn't it?
Yeah, the mindset in Texas is it's bigger and better, and we kind of are counterproductive to that overall mindset. I think we probably fit more of that New England traditional liberal arts philosophy in a million ways, and I hope we'll deep dive into some of those. But also, we're in the shadow of one of the largest research institutions in the country with the University of Texas. Um, in certain parts of the country, you can throw a rock and hit a liberal arts college. That is not necessarily the case in Texas. And so while it might feel a little different, I think we serve an important purpose in an important space. Not everything has to be bigger and better to be amazing in Texas or to be experienced in Texas.
Now, Southwestern, the vast majority of your students come from Texas.
They do.
When students are considering Southwestern, are they considering the big schools in Texas? Are they considering other liberal arts colleges in other states? What is usually their considered set?
Yeah, I think that varies from student to student in a really unique way. For some students, the attraction is the liberal arts college. And so we might see overlap from places like Trinity University in San Antonio, Austin College in Sherman, Rhodes in Memphis, Hendrix in Conway, Arkansas. So for somebody that knows they want liberal arts and maybe wants to be a little further south, we've seen those as our overlap partners. For individuals that are looking for strong academics in the state of Texas, there may be a mix between public and private, and there may be a mix between different sizes. So a student may look at a UT, an A&M, a Rice, a Southwestern, an SMU, and a TCU in their kind of portfolio, which sounds a little foreign because those are all very different types of institutions, but they all are really strong in an academic fashion. And students tend to find there's one reason why they want to connect with them versus another. Sometimes it will be the connection of Austin, quite honestly. They know that Austin is this vibrant, engaging city. You mentioned the moniker of the Armadillo World Headquarters. The other moniker that often is associated with Austin is the live music capital of the world. We have several music festivals every year, lots of concerts. And so live music is a huge part of who we are. And so for many students, that is an attraction. And so then oddly, they will look at the University of Texas, maybe Texas State in San Marcos, which is about 30 minutes south of Austin, St. Edward's in Austin, which is a mid-size Catholic institution, and Southwestern to the north. So again, kind of a diverse portfolio, but all connected to the beauty of Central Texas and the amazing city of Austin. And then sometimes you'll have athletes that we are a Division III institution. We'll have students that are looking for that Division III excellent academic liberal arts experience, but there isn't a lot of that opportunity where they are. And so west of the Mississippi, D3 athletics is not as prominent. And so a student that doesn't want to go D1 or D2 wants that great education, wants a athletic experience, may come from Arizona or from Colorado or from Utah. California, very honestly, is our second largest market. And so we see students come from there. So I think for each student, it can be very different as to how Southwestern rises on their list and what those connections are.
And for sports, what is the natural rivalry?
Trinity in San Antonio is the natural rivalry and has been for a long time. Although, if you dig deep into the history of Southwestern, there were many sports in which we actually played the University of Texas, and I'm proud to say that the Pirates every once in a while did pull out a dub, even against the big behemoth of the Longhorns.
But not in football, right?
Actually, once in football.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I mean, remember, Southwestern is the oldest institution, or maybe you don't remember, maybe you don't know. Southwestern is the oldest institution of higher learning in the state of Texas. And so we actually precede the University of Texas at Austin in our founding. And so UT was our baby brother. We actually were Texas University first. When the state decided they
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
create their land grant institution, they came knocking on the door and said, "Would you be willing to change your name?" And at that point in time, we ceded the name Texas University to the state. They formed University of Texas, and we became Southwestern University.
So you get where you said California is the second largest market.
It is.
When people from California come up to you, like I'm going to be going to New York for the
Sure.
colleges that will change lives. If people come up to you or want someone on your team in Los Angeles or San Francisco, what questions they typically ask about Texas?
A lot of times weather, is it parallel to California? Because Californians do love their weather. A lot of times our California families are connected in two or three ways. Sometimes they themselves lived in Texas. They're transplants that have gone to California or are working in an industry that is about to come to Texas. A lot of Californians are moving to the Austin area these days with the high tech hub that is being created. Number two, it can be athletics and talking about that because there isn't a ton of D3 athletics in California. And then I think the third thing that often is an attractor is the vibe. Once again, that Austin proximity bleeds into our community just a mere 30 minutes away. And that vibe is parallel to LA. It is parallel to San Francisco. It is fun. It is hip. It is cool. It is also laid back. And so I think for many of those students, it feels, while somewhat of a distance, a very natural place to transition to without having to make a big change as to who they are and what they're all about.
Now, aside from the location and some of the academics, what else separates Southwestern from, the similar schools?
Yeah, from similar liberal arts schools, I think that our Paideia educational philosophy is something that's really different. And for some students, it begins to clarify what the liberal arts is. Remember, Texas doesn't have a ton of liberal arts colleges, and so this mindset is something that we're often having to teach and explain and help them understand the benefits of. So I would say Paideia is one. I think the ability to enjoy the outdoors pretty much 11 and a half months a year. Or maybe, I mean, if the heat is a little much for someone, more like 8.5 months a year, where you're not having those long stretches of time with a deep winter, depending on the year or the season, where students don't find that they're mixing and mingling and engaging in quite a way. So we have several outdoor classrooms. We have spaces to study outdoors that have electronic capabilities. Students get out on our academic mall and study and create art and have fun playing volleyball together, but also just enjoying outside and sunshine. So I do think the weather and our location, we have a town that has a river and a lake, and our school connects to hiking and biking trails. And so sometimes in that trade-off of picking that ideal college, you thrive in the big city, but then there's some pros and cons about being in the middle of a city. And sometimes there's some pros and cons about being in a really small rural community, which is sometimes where you find liberal arts colleges. Southwestern's really in a sweet spot. We have all the access that we want to, not only to Austin, we're about an hour and a half from San Antonio, we're 3 hours from Houston, we're 2.5 to 3 hours from the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. So we really have connections all across the state to some major metro areas. But then also we're in this beautiful historic district of Georgetown that when the students and the community day in, day out needs to do their job, engaging, teaching, learning, growing, we feel like we're tucked into kind of a New England-esque community, and students feel like they live and work in a bubble. And so we are really in a unique sweet spot for the traditional liberal arts college.
You said the word paideia. Is that a Spanish word?
It is actually Greek, and it is the
Oh,
sum of one's learning.
okay.
So when you see it sometimes printed when we're doing kind of traditional marketing of Paideia, you'll see Greek letters used in the spelling of it. But it is our academic educational philosophy. Many times when you have a liberal arts experience, you have your major, you have this core curriculum that you're going to choose from, and that's going to expose you to broad disciplines. Fantastic. That gets back to the traditional liberal arts philosophy. Where Paideia is a little different is that we believe that learning, it's great that you've taken a math class and an art history class and a political science class. But if you're not making the connections between them, we're missing out on part of that. The second element of paideia is that paideia doesn't just happen in the classroom. It can happen on an athletic field. It can happen in a conversation at a fraternity party on a Friday night. It can happen as you're serving as a leader of a new student organization. So the true idea of paideia, once again, the sum of one's learning, is to be interdisciplinary, interconnected, and engaged. And so when students and faculty do this collaboratively, and I'll tell you, I try to have paideia moments with the students that work for me in the admission office. What did you learn from this question that this family asked? How were you able to connect them to your education? When you're dribbling a ball at soccer practice, how does that connect to the math concepts that you had in calculus? You're dribbling through cones, and all of a sudden the student sees, this is the waves that I've studied in calculus. I didn't think that I'd ever connect my academics to practice on the soccer field. Or when a science student takes an art history class and they're looking at a painting from an in-depth perspective, unique thoughts and ideas as to how an artist drew their piece. And then you take that back into the science lab where I'm looking into a microscope. Have I now trained my eyes to look differently at the microbe on the slide because of how I've trained my eyes to look at a piece of art from art history? So you wouldn't necessarily put any of those kind of four ideas together, soccer practice and math, art history and science. But when you begin to make these paideia moments, is what we call them with students, faculty, and staff, you have these paideia moments in which you're making these connections. All of a sudden you see that just because you're an X major doesn't mean you're only going to see the world from that X philosophy. Your X major connects to art, it connects to science, it connects to politics. How do we make those connections so you see your passion from a very worldly, interdisciplinary, and interconnected perspective?
Now, I saw three references to paideia.
Okay,
First is what you've just covered.
sure.
The second is paideia minors, which seem
Yeah,
to be a mix of subjects that comprise a minor.
right.
The third was graduating with paideia distinction.
That's right.
And what are those the two what do those two mean?
Sure. So a Paideia minor is a student that truly wants to elevate that interconnected and interdisciplinary mindset. So they continue to take courses that will then allow them to kind of see that fruition. And they work with a Paideia professor to bring that all together. Graduating with Paideia honors is a student, and with, let me take one step back, I apologize. With the Paideia minor, you will actually be in a cohort in your junior and senior year that is a mixed group. It's not all political scientists, it's not all biology majors, but everyone's coming together. The class actually chooses something they want to study together. with the
Okay.
faculty members' guidance. And then they bring this 3.5 years worth of experience together to formulate an idea, a concept, a problem that they want to solve together, and see how their education from all different angles and perspectives can come together and make change. When they
So,
do Paideia with honors, they are taking some of our encouraged high impact experiences, study abroad, community engaged learning, research with professors, and internships, and they're required to do at least 2 of those to tie in to their Paideia experience and take the learning out of Southwestern and into the community, to a workspace, to another country, to a place within our community to give to others.
in other words, let's say it's a Paideia minor.
Yeah.
You would know you wanted to do the minor beginning of your junior year, end of sophomore year, beginning of your junior year.
I think that's generally when that time frame begins to expose
Okay.
themselves. Some students really drink the Paideia Kool-Aid and they come in thinking, I'm going to take every advantage of this. They won't start it until the end of their sophomore, early part of their junior year, but they begin to kind of look at it holistically as this is part of my plan. And our professional academic advisors will talk to them based on some of the tidbits that they might give to that advisor, saying, I really think I want to do X, Y, and Z from high impact experiences. I love the idea of Paideia. And so then the light bulb goes off with us as advisors to be able to say, have you considered a Paideia minor where you can really put that into a cool package and be able to talk about it in your job interviews, in your graduate school applications to show your broad-based, interconnected, interdisciplinary thinking.
Now, what share of the student body then double majors?
Mm.
Does a major with a Paideia minor? Could they do more than one Paideia minor?
I don't think they'll do more than one Paideia minor.
Okay.
Most of our students will do a major minor combo.
Okay.
It's interesting. We had a group on campus the other day and somebody asked the double major question. I don't have a data point from it, but I would guess probably less than 10% of our students do the double major. And it's
That's
not for lack of accessibility. I think they do amazing things outside of the classroom that complement their work inside of the classroom, and they find there's a time balance that goes along with it. But our curriculum is divided into thirds. 1/3 is the major, 1/3 is the liberal arts core, and 1/3 is electives. So the flexibility that you're referencing and asking that question is there. Is it a major and a double minor? Is it a major and a Paideia minor? Is it a double major? Or for our students that are preparing for medical school, sometimes they choose to major in something that's not science. I want to be a history major. I want to be a business major. But then as they're preparing for medical school, those electives become the core requirements needed to go on to that professional environment. And so I love the flexibility that, number one, you absolutely do not have to be locked in concrete with what you want to do for the rest of your life when you walk in the door at 17. If you think you like psychology and you think you like biology, take a couple of courses in those. One could rise to be the major, one could be could kind of fall to be the minor. Or maybe you take them and you say, I don't like either one of these, but that anthropology class that I took really connected with me. And I think that's the direction you want to go. And the beauty of our flexibility is it does not preclude you from graduating on time, because that elective box is 1/3 of your education. So I love students that are multi-decided or, reflecting on different areas of interest when they come in, because I love that they're exploring. I love the pre-med student that says, I don't have to be a biology major to go to medical school because I'm going to study science for the rest of my life. And therefore, I'm going to major in art or in theater or in history and pursue the electives that I need to go to graduate school. And I love the kid that wants to be pre-law that chooses something besides history and political science, because again, law is a thinking profession and we teach you how to think across the board, whether that is art history or sociology. It's not just in history and political science.
You took me to a question because I was thinking pre-med as you were talking.
Yeah.
I know people who have majors in political science and economics and history, and they did the pre-med core. Could a pre-med core be a Paideia minor?
It's probably not quite distinctive enough in order to go, or it's not quite diverse enough. In order
I,
to go to medical school, they're looking for that set curriculum of two biologies, two chems, two physics, calculus, and statistics. That's that core that you have to have in order to apply for medical school. So the history major, as an example, or the English major, they would only have to take in Southwestern's curriculum one science course. That could be a math class, it could be a natural science class, it could be computer science. They otherwise would never touch, they don't, not never touch, they are not required to touch that core science unit. So that pre-med core isn't quite diverse enough from a Paideia experience
so
perspective to be able to prep them. Now, if they kind of created the natural science core that they need to prepare for medical school, but then did a whole lot of business and wanted to incorporate, we have a history of medicine course in our history department. If they wanted to pull some of those things together, that's when you begin to see that Paideia experience coming along.
okay, or there's a healthcare economics course
Yeah,
or
healthcare
something,
economics would be a
or
great one.
medical ethics and a
That's right.
philosophy major.
That's right.
What are the more popular majors?
So by student choice, and this is about a 10-year time frame, biology with students passionate about going into the medical sciences, but not all of them. We have many that are research oriented and go on to graduate school. Psychology, communication studies, business, and then political science, English, kinesiology, kind of all jockey for number 5. With our proximity to Austin, which is the state capital, there are a lot of students that like the idea of getting that political science and practical experience along with it. We also have an internship program in Washington, D.C., and then Georgetown is actually the county seat of Williamson County. So for that student that was really passionate about politics, they could do a local, a state, and a federal internship prior to the time that they graduate.
How did they get to Austin?
Um, that is probably one of Southwestern's most unique elements is that Texans don't always believe in mass transportation,
Yeah,
depending
that's what
on
I asked.
where you are hearing and listening from. Within some of the bigger cities, there are bus systems, but there is not a subway line or a T line that comes out of Austin. There is a metro line that does come north, but it goes to a different suburban community, and we haven't quite had them come east enough for us to pick up with the Georgetown in that respect.
Because it could be
Um,
kind of expensive to Uber, I would think, even for
it,
half
it
an
can
hour.
get a little expensive to Uber, and quite honestly, Texans like their cars.
Yeah.
They like the ability to drive. As someone who is born and bred Texan, when I go to spaces that have mass transportation, it brings me joy. And so it is a little different for out-of-state students that come to Texas that mass transportation doesn't exist in mass. Most people have a vehicle. Southwestern does participate in a car share program on our campus. We have 2 vehicles that students could rent for the short term. If they needed to go into Austin for a one-time gig or if they needed to go to a doctor's appointment. But I think many students can survive very comfortably in the first and second year without a vehicle. And then after that, they realize that the internship, that volunteering time starts to kick into play, and having a vehicle is a little more important along the way. I also love, though, the friendliness of Texans. No one wants to go to the grocery store by themselves. If you're going into Austin, it's far more fun when you have a group of friends. And so, I had a roommate from Mechanicsville, Maryland, a place that I couldn't have found on a map when she first arrived. And when I went to the grocery store, I always just called her and said, "Hey, I'm going. Do you want to go?" So I think the friendliness of Texans also blends together. Nobody's going to Walmart by themselves. It's far more fun in college to make those trips a group effort and have a whole lot of fun, especially when they occur at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and you can kind of rule the roost in Walmart for a little bit.
Are you an alum?
I am an alum of Southwestern, a very proud graduate.
How has this school changed since you graduated?
I think, and I share this philosophy widely, I think at the core, Southwestern remains tied to its 1840 roots. It believes in providing an education that gives students an opportunity to think and grow both professionally, academically, and personally. Students, societal waves, our education system in general has gone through massive changes in the 180 plus years that Southwestern has been in existence. But I think when push comes to shove, day in and day out, we are looking for engaged learners that are excited to be involved in a classroom dynamic. That doesn't mean you're Hermione Granger and every time the professor asks a question, you're throwing your hand into the air. It's a space where students can say, you know, Stuart, I heard you talk about this book that, you know, the chapter that we read last night, and I valued your perspective, but I see it from a very different way. I grew up in this community, you grew up in that community. And because of that, I look at it with a different set of lenses. And at the end, both of us grow from learning from each other. And sometimes that growth is a little uncomfortable and a little different, especially for students in high school that are not taught to share thoughts and opinions. And so I value that at Southwestern, that is part of our academic fabric. I value that an Anglo student can be part of the Black Student Association because they want to have a diverse perspective as they go into the workforce. I value that two different, vastly different organizations will partner for a cause on campus because they believe, even though they come from vastly different zones, that that cause is worth our community reflecting on and thinking about and contributing to. And so I think that there was part of my career in which I worked with alumni to support our admission effort, and I would hear the stories of their Southwesterns from the 70s, from the 60s, from the 80s, and those themes of community, of collaboration, of dedication to academics are multi-generational. How has Georgetown grown in you know all that period of time? That's vastly different. How has Austin grown? How do we put education into play? I think internships were always part of something, but now they're a real focus in what we want students to experience, like study abroad, like research with professors, like community engaged learning. So I think that at Southwestern's core, we remain true to our roots and our history and our proud connection to being the first institution of higher learning in the state of Texas. But we have to grow and engage students where they're at. And our faculty are discovering things and teaching in fields that might not have existed before. You know, I talk about our amazing professor, Dr. Debika Sihi, in business. In the beginning of her career, she probably wasn't focusing on social media as a business marketing tool. And now it's one of the most popular classes in the business department. But that wasn't taught in the 50s, 60s, or 70s in the business department. So I love Southwestern's core to its roots. I love that Southwestern is visionary, both in its academic and student preparation, to make sure we're staying at the forefront of education, especially in Texas.
A college has to have a really strong academic advising model for that to work.
It does, and
And a
I'm
pretty
thankful.
collegial faculty, I would imagine, too.
Yeah, I'm thankful for we have a director of advising and retention, and her vision in the last, I think she's been with us about 10 years now. Her vision to get us evolving in that is what you're talking about. It is strong. We welcome students in their first year to engage with a professional academic advisor, not just with someone who's going to meet them one time prior to the time in which they have to register. And the only objective of that meeting is, am I taking courses that are going to help me graduate? These individuals are trained within their academic disciplines. So natural sciences, social sciences, fine arts, humanities. And then there are two that are trained kind of broadly for either the multi-decided student or the individual that, you know, they need some extra space for the heavy science students because there are so many of them. But they are also trained in student life and in student engagement to help make sure that student is finding their space to be able to find connections outside of the academic unit. And so they're really serving as these guideposts. They meet with them 4 times a semester within the first year. Are you making friends? Are you connecting? How's your mental health? Do you know what to do about X, Y, or Z? You know, did your bill get paid? Have you filed your FAFSA for next year? To make sure that student success is part of that advising perspective. And then they get passed on to academic advisors, often within the discipline, if the student is ready for that. But again, we have some folks like myself, I'm an academic advisor, and I'm trained across the board because I'm not a biology professor. And so if that student is still exploring, they can come be with me and I can guide them through that period of time. But we get a lot of training, we utilize a lot of tools, and we're seeing a really positive impact in some of our retention spaces because our students are finding that people are here for them and are connecting with them.
There are national issues in admissions and student life, and then there are Texas issues in admissions and student life.
Yes.
Um, how does the school, because it's a private college, how does it position itself? If the governor of Texas says, I don't want DEI at the University of Texas or any of the state schools, or I don't want this.
Yes.
How does a private, how does how does Southwestern react to that? Does it say, okay, you want to be political science and you want to be in the gay student organization, come on over.
Sure.
Is that what you do, or how do you do it?
How do you navigate the landscape of Texas politics? Let's get
And
to it, Stuart. That's what we're
and also because you visit high schools in
That's
Texas,
right. Absolutely.
and I'm so
There is a famous school in North Texas that recently garnered national attention because their school board was going to shut down a transgendered student playing a female lead in a play. And it was amazing to see how the community, the state, and national organizations, including a Broadway cast, responded to them. So there are some things that are a little delicate in Texas right now, and I understand that especially has some impact potentially on how comfortable students and families are in sending their students to this space. I am proud to say, and I certainly can't speak for all private institutions, but I'm very proud to say that Southwestern has assessed the laws that are being applied to Texas public institutions individually to determine whether those are the right fit things for our students and our community. So prior to the DEI topic that you were referencing, the first thing that we really dealt with was the gun laws in the state of Texas. And we are a right to carry state, students can carry a gun on public school campuses. We did not feel that was right for us. And so we are a no carry space. There are opportunities for students to have their weapons because we're in Texas. So a lot of students will like to go hunt on the weekends. We don't want to preclude them from engaging in an activity that brings them joy, but they cannot keep their hunting rifle in the car. They have to store that either off campus, at a local space, or maybe at their, place that they go and do that hunting. But we did not feel that campus carry was something that was right fit for us. The more recent example is DEI. And I am proud to say that yesterday, our second candidate for a diversity, inclusion, and belonging vice president was on our campus. So we have chosen to hear the mindset of the governor and again assess what is right for our community. And we felt like creating a diverse, welcoming, engaged, and educated community was Southwestern's most important responsibility. It's also important to have that perspective because Texas is a minority majority state. The, the population of Texas is not all white. And so to create a space in which all students, all residents of Texas could feel safe and could be a part of an educational space was something very important to us. Our JEDI Center, which is our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion community, is huge. And again, students from different backgrounds engage and participate in organizations that may not be their exact color of skin or their exact belief. I love that that is the approach that we have chosen to take personally, but also I think we have created a great community because of that. The rights for women in Texas, again, have some very strict guidelines, and Southwestern has very carefully analyzed those, and our health services area has certain products and supplies that can help women in times of need if that is what is needed. And so we again are trying to provide safe spaces within the confines. Now, the governor at some point in time could come down very harshly and say, hey, you private schools, you get money from the state. And if you think you want to consider that funding opportunity in the future, you need to abide by the same laws that our public schools have abided by. At the moment, those things have not happened. And so at the moment, Southwestern has proudly made its choices to be a leader in education in the state of Texas, to provide a community for all. And I will stand with joy with my administration that has made that choice and hope that we are able to continue to do so.
One of the things I did learn as I went through a lot of the content is your volume of applications has gone up.
Yeah,
Something's working,
something's working.
and it's gone up. It's almost like a hockey stick or a
Yes.
small mountain
Yep.
slope kind of thing. Sticking to that message of joy, do you think that's driving the volume?
I think there's probably in some spaces, yes, in some spaces, no. We have seen a little bit of a decline in our out-of-state market. And I will be
Mhm.
honest, when I've traveled to some of those locations, I get a lot of political questions. It's not the first time that wave has happened to Texas. It won't be the last time that wave has happened to Texas. And we welcome the students for whom they see the opportunity for change. Like I said, our proximity to the Capitol allows students to go and be activists if that's what they want to do. If they want to go and work on the Hill, then let's allow them to do that. But for other families, there may be some discomfort there, and I recognize that as well. I think the reputation of Southwestern is growing. Our partnership with CTCL is something that brings us joy, but we have also worked very hard to become a nationally known liberal arts and sciences space that is one that students can come, grow, thrive, and be a valued alumnus with. And so I think there's a little bit of that. It's no secret demographically, Texas is one of the largest spaces. And even though we're going to hit an enrollment cliff, Texas is going to have plenty of high school age students, even
That's
through the demographic challenges. And so I think that ties into some of our success as well, is that we're just in a state that is growing where other liberal arts colleges, unfortunately, are in markets that are shrinking. And we are trying to tap into that and be proud of representing our state with this type of educational opportunity.
given what you just said, you're going to be in an interesting position because the schools in those states are going to want Texas
Oh,
kids.
they're here. If
Yeah.
they had a great enrollment leader, they have been here for 2 or 3 years planting their flag. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex has over 150 regional representatives in that space alone. That means that there are people who work for colleges outside of Texas, but are representing that school in the Metroplex. And so they have come already with their flags, and we welcome them with our hospitality, but then we're working hard to let students know you don't have to leave the state in order to have a great educational opportunity.
Do you get, not necessarily you, but does your team get pushback from parents sometimes? Because I can imagine going to a Texas high school, they go, are you going to be using those books in a history class or
Yeah.
things like that?
Yeah, and I think any liberal arts institution is going to have some question of whether we are quote unquote woke, or whether, what does liberal really mean? I don't want my student going to a liberal college. Then it's our job to kick into gear and say, you know what, social justice is a value of our Methodist tradition and our community, and we want students to have an understanding of different opinions. We do have organizations that cover a broad gamut of support for students that covers religious, political, diversity, philosophical. And if this isn't the right place for your student, that's okay. And that's why there are 4,000 other colleges across the country for maybe whom your student might find a more comfortable nature. But I think I'm also going to take a moment to say I wouldn't describe Southwestern as the conservative liberal arts capital of the world. We just happen to be in a conservative state.
Right.
Does a conservative student not feel comfortable here? No, there's plenty of spaces for that. And there are plenty of what you might imagine that very typical Texan with, a starched white shirt and some boots and some jeans and maybe even a cowboy hat. And they believe very strongly in a conservative perspective. And then I have a population of students that are ear piercing, colored hair, very liberal mindset. And then I have a population in the middle that that kind of sees elements of both sides. Maybe they grew up in a split household of opinions. What I love about Southwestern is all of those students can feel comfortable here if that is what they are looking for. But if you're truly wanting a very conservative space, we may not be the right match, and that's okay.
Now, you're going to you're admitting a freshman class right now. You're recruiting, and
Yeah.
you're going to have a freshman class. What are these freshmen going to see by the time they graduate that your graduating seniors will never get to see?
Yeah, I think a couple of things are going to be exciting to see them roll out. So we are about to build a new residence hall complex that they won't live in, but they will see. And I think that mindset of a traditional residential liberal arts college will change with that addition of the residence hall unit that is coming on board. It is going to be primarily for first year students, but I'm really excited as to what it's going to mean kind of down the line. We have a 1-year residency right now. I'm sorry, a 2-year residency right now. I anticipate that potentially rolling to a 3-year residency when we get our residence halls stable, and really that, like I said, that residential liberal arts philosophy kind of blooming and shining. I think the second thing that I'm really excited about is that Southwestern has come alive again in its student life. Like all institutions, when COVID hit, we had to shut down, and students literally were coming out to go to class. They were masked, they were eating in the dining hall, or they were grabbing their food, and then they were going back to their residence hall. And that experience, we're still hearing how it shaped them. And this group of seniors was the COVID class. We have a vice president of student life right now that has said, I am tired of them being in their rooms on their phones and not engaging. And that is not who Southwestern is. And so this year, an outstanding outdoor recreation program has been it's in its second year, but we took 12 students over the winter break to Mount Kilimanjaro, and they hiked the whole thing. Those
Oh,
students paid $500 for that 10-day experience. It was underwritten with a gift to be
wow.
able to show them not only the world, but how to work as a team, how to engage with people that aren't in your major, how to conquer something so massive that you don't ever think that you would be able to do it. And the stories they tell and the pictures and the videos that came back from that were amazing. So,
Everyone got to the top?
they
Everyone made
got
it?
to the top.
Wow.
They got all the way to the top. So I
Wow.
think we're going to take advantage of our beauty and our location with a growing outdoor recreation program, but also a re-emphasis and a rebirth of student life. COVID be damned, we are ready to move on, and we're ready to see students grow, leadership, engagement, finding their passions, no matter what that is. We're not trying to put them into a box. We're trying to make the boxes available again for them to experience that. I think we're going to continue to see emphasis on high impact experiences, and that exists for our students now. So I kind of am skirting away from your question just a wee bit. But I think we're going to continue to see that grow as well, as that kind of got pulled back with COVID. Studying abroad really kind of took a skid when we couldn't send students around the country or around the world. Internships pulled back to being a virtual setting, and I think we're getting our students back into real spaces,
Going to
and
work.
that's helping them to find those connections again. So that emphasis remains important to us. I feel like we've got our education space. in a really good, Paideia is growing and thriving. The interdisciplinary elements of the thirds learning environment and the flexibility, that is really great. So I feel like we're putting out an excellent product from the very beginning with students there. You mentioned in the very beginning of our conversation, we have been recognized as a Hispanic serving institution. And I think you're going to continue to see growth and appreciation of who we are in our state and recognizing how we can contribute, learn, grow, and thrive as an HSI institution. We were blessed. Not a lot of liberal arts colleges receive this distinction. It typically goes to your mid-sized publics that are heavily housed in high Hispanic areas. And so to be recognized as a Hispanic serving institution, not only on our first application, but as a liberal arts college, said a whole lot about what the Department of Ed saw and what we were doing in supporting our students, and is really opening our vision to continue to be a space where Hispanic students, Latinx students, and all students of color can come and grow and thrive at Southwestern.
Christine, thank you for this time today. I've enjoyed this.
Thanks, Stuart. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you. And I look forward to hopefully getting to know some students that have crossed your path and may feel like Southwestern is a place that they want to explore more. I'm happy for them to reach out to me personally, and I will connect them with the admission counselor that represents their area.
Thank you. And I hope you don't mind that some of them may speak New Jersey.
You know, I have Italian in my roots. I would welcome their New Jersey as long as they're bringing me some good food to complement it.
Okay. I'll tell them.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.